Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to watch this interview. My name is Temujin Suring, and I have the great opportunity to sit down with Ms. Oyungerel Tsedevdamba to discuss the ongoing demonstrations in Mongolia. So without further ado, let's get started. Ms. Oyungerel, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to partake in this interview and to explain what you have observed so far. So let me also introduce to the listeners who you are. So Ms. Oyungerel, she is a renowned author and prominent human rights activist in Mongolia. She is a former Minister of Culture, Tourism, and Sports, former Member of Parliament. She has also recently founded the Civic Unity Party. And regarding her educational background, she obtained her bachelor's degree in planning economics from the Ural State University of Economics, her MBA from the Academy of National Economy under the Russian Federation, her master's in international policy studies from Stanford, and was a fellow for the Yale World Fellows Program. So once again, thank you so much, and I'm glad you're here. So I'll hand the microphone to you now.
Thank you for inviting me. This is probably the first interview I'm giving to in English to a Mongolian fellow who are transmitting it for the Mongolians, young Mongolians who are interested in the domestic news in the country's news in English. So I'm happy to share it.
Wonderful. All right, so let's get right into the question. So the first question I want to ask to you is, what caused this protest that has been happening for over a week now? Is it due to a singular issue, or is it a culmination of issues that has been building up these past years?
Actually, this is a very good question, but I think it's both. I think it's both. Mm-hmm. So cumulative part of this that made so many people angry at this boiling point is that it's ever-growing disparity of wealth, and some people are getting enormously wealthy by unfair means, and the law is not working well, and law enforcement is not working well, and also there are lots of misuse of power involved in this growing disparity. That's what makes people really, really angry. This is the building, this kind of anger was building and building for a long time. But the one single point that brought them all into the street was the exposure of the coal theft, the case of coal theft. Mm-hmm. And the numbers were counted in billions of dollars and trillions of tugriks. And that was enormous amount of theft that had been done systematically with involvement of probably the highest level officials for a long time. So that made people really, really angry. And one singular issue that is being repeated over the 11 days of demonstration is that people just got fed up from thieves in the government. So they want to remove all the thieves from the government positions, and they want to have no more thieves in the government.
No more thieves in the government, correct. Mm-hmm. And so it is, to my understanding, that it was reported that it's about 44 trillion tugriks, or almost 13 billion US dollars, which is a very significant amount, because I saw somewhere floating around on Facebook that value is about 1 year's GDP of Mongolia. Is that correct?
It's more than that.
More than that, okay.
Yeah, actually, the numbers varying from the various sources. The numbers being discussed are quite different.
Yeah.
But that number, that number 44 trillions of tugriks, brought everybody to the street. Even so, the various sources are saying various numbers, but not depending how numbers are changing, the anger of the power holders being involved in the coal theft is making people most angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so no matter what the amount is, it's just the fact that there is money being stolen from the revenues is just what is outraging these people. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And I believe you answered this already while you were speaking earlier, but I also wanted to ask, what is the objective of this protest, and what are the people of Mongolia demanding?
Demands are because this demonstration is no specific organizer. There was no clear demand from the beginning, but many people started having many different demands. But streamlined, but the main theme of the various demands seems to be to take those officials, high officials, accountable, whoever was involved in the coal theft. So list their names, expose their names, and keep them accountable, and tighten the punishment. So that three things seem to be the most consistent demand. And they also want the parliament to tighten the rules, tighten the laws that served as a soft pillow for corrupt officials. Many corrupt officials were getting elected back to parliament, getting nominated back to the cabinet, even after many exposures were happening in the past. Like SME case, G2, they call it a small medium enterprise support fund, if that money being taken by powerful people, by members of parliament from the SME fund, that was a huge scandal like a year ago, and a year or so ago, and then 2 years ago. And then after a year of that scandal, many of those people who were involved in that scandal were all nominated back to parliament and all got elected back to parliament, and ministers were appointed from those lists, and people were remaining angry about that, because whatever media does, whatever people do to expose all those thieves and corrupt officials, and all those corrupt officials are coming back. It's because the law was allowing them to come back so quickly. And secondly, if somebody is, for example, sentenced very softly because of the, even though the corruption case is solved on court, they're not going to prison, and they're not being banned from working in government. So people are demanding to ban corrupt officials and thieves from working in government for lifetime, etc. So people are demanding tighter rules.
Yeah, so it seems like this soft pillow, like you said, it's been an issue for many years. For example, I'm thinking of in one of the presidential elections, there was the 60 billion Tugruk scandal involving with one of the former chairmen of parliament, or the 2016 Panama Papers expose, where there was a former prime minister that was listed on there. And obviously, they're still roaming around free. One of them is still serving in parliament.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So just as a follow-up question, do you think because of these demonstrations, do you think that there's a path for parliament to pass laws or have tighter regulations and enforcement of these laws, and rather create a hard pillow opposite to the soft pillow? Do you think that's foreseeable in the near future?
One of the results of this demonstration probably will be that, because the pillows will be harder to fall. So currently, even today, cabinet was making a statement that they are submitting a law that will give a much longer punishment for corrupt officials whose corruption and whose embezzlement were proven by court. Then that person will not serve for government anymore for a lifetime, and in some cases they will be imprisoned for 20 years instead of just being fined in Mongolia. In Mongolia, there was a corruption case actually sentenced by court to have 1 billion Tughrik corruption case was solved by court, and the person who was sentenced received only 40 million Tugriks fine as a sentence. And people were saying on the demonstration, they are saying that if somebody has a 1 billion Tugrik corruption and 40 million Tugrik fine, then the corrupt guy got profit of 960 million Tugriks. So why we should provide so much profits to corrupt people? So that's why people are demanding for tighter rules.
The next question is, how has the government responded? And obviously, you said that the cabinet is submitting a new law for more harsh restrictions and regulations. And do you think so far how the government has responded? Is it satisfying the streamlined demand you mentioned earlier?
Government is probably not satisfying yet because people are still on the street. That means people are not satisfied yet. And even so, government started reacting to take actions under pressure of the demonstrators from day 3 or 4. Their actions are still not satisfactory to the demonstrators yet, because first of all, people are demanding the list of high-level officials who were involved in the coal theft scheme, and secondly, they're demanding the tighter rules being approved, and enforced. So that is not happening yet. And the law draft is just in a discussion and submitting stage, and people are demanding to see the real law. And also, in the first few days when the government announced that they arrested some executives and former executives of state mining company, crowd were just yelling, saying that we need high officials' names. So those executives are small guys, and we know that this coal theft is happening in a way broader way, and way broader avenue is open for them, and you should name those people. So people are seeing everywhere that some people who are becoming outrageously rich by dealing with coal are doing it in through some scheme, and people are demanding to expose that scheme.
And yeah, while I was preparing for this interview, I saw an article. It was published by The Diplomat. There was a quote. They quoted the Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs, Nyambatar, and he was quoted at a press conference saying that, and it was translated to English, that I do not have the legal rights to release the medium and high-level thieves by their names, unquote. So how does that mix into everything that's going on? Does it make the situation worse? Does it help his case as to why he can't release the names? How does that play?
Yeah, he didn't release anyone's names. Then the authority that released someone's names is the Independent Authority Against Corruption, which was yesterday. They listed some 17 names. Even so, there were high-level officials among those 17 names that Independent Agency Against Corruption announced yesterday. People were still not satisfied with that. So somehow people are aware of how coal theft scheme is working. Lots of people are aware about that, but people just demand to stop it. And what the approaches that government is trying to poke this way and that way seem to be not covering the whole entire scope of the coal theft. So that seems to be the problem. As a political organization, my party, the Civic Unity Party, we set up a working group, a small working group, to research the current laws which might have enabled the whole entire coal theft to occur without any legal barriers, without any legal obstacles. Indeed, we did find lots of connected to each other laws that actually might have enabled the Broadway of coal theft. So just the coal is just on a highway. It's like a highway of coal theft is already existing thanks to these laws that are connected with each other. So our party just today, we announced on Sopatr Square on Facebook Live that actually we have a big highway of coal theft because our parliament enabled many individuals and companies to have tax-free coal deals. Just the tax avoidance is just enormous. Maybe in order to be in that tax-free environment, people probably do all kinds of corrupt activities in order to benefit from that tax-free environment. Like unregulated market of coal is created by the enabling laws. So like laws on minerals and laws on all the, I can translate it immediately in the fast way into English. So there are several economic laws and also several sanction laws that were all connected in order to ensure many companies and many individuals benefit from the coal, gold, and maybe iron ore, etc., all kinds of mineral transactions. So there might be the anti-corruption agency and police might be able to find a tiny portion of the coal theft, but the major portion of coal theft is actually happening legally because our laws are enabling that.
Okay. So that's actually very interesting because I thought these legislators, lawmakers, they were using loopholes, so like secret pathways around the law, but it seems like it was just right there in the public.
It's just right there. It's just right there openly. There was many activities that are unregulated and that are actively playing on coal market and actively benefiting from coal and other minerals transactions, and that are all can work like that only when the powerful people are backing them, So it's like a wild jungle out there. It's like a jungle of who's more powerful, who can get more benefit, who can get more chunks of the coal. So it's unregulated, huge black market is there, allowed by law.
And yeah, I'd like to move on to the next question now. So it seems like there's two major organizations that the demonstrations are really focusing their protests on. So obviously one is Parliament, and within the Parliament is Prime Minister Oyungerel Tsedevdamba and the Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs Nyambatar, and the second being the Anti-Corruption Agency and Authority. But it seems like the protests, from what I have observed, they're really focusing more heavily on Parliament. They're demanding action from Prime Minister Oyungerel Tsedevdamba and Minister of Justice Nyambatar. Would you say that the focus on these protesters are unbalanced between the two? Is there also an equal amount of protests and demands on the Anti-Corruption Agency in Mongolia?
Actually, I think that people are targeting correctly because the major just a major loss that Mongolian people are enduring is not only because of the theft that happened in violation of the law, but also because of the legislations that are enabling the thieves to play softly, to play openly, and just to avoid all the sanctions and all the regulations, so that's why the probably the biggest fault among all this big coal theft is Parliament, because Parliament approved the laws in enabling the black market of coal and the avenue of coal theft, and Parliament have cut the arms and legs of the law enforcement agencies to go after these things, So that's why even law enforcement agencies want to catch the political powers behind the coal deals. There's no law for them to hold in front of them, So that's why people's anger are aiming at the Parliament quite fairly.
Okay, so that explains why that the protesters are focusing mainly on Parliament, is because, like you said, they're the enablers. They let this happen. They gave the rubber stamp of approval, and like you said, they
exactly. Also, they might be the members of Parliament might be the beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries of this scheme that they built for themselves.
And yeah, so that leads into my next question. So like you said, recently, the Anti-Corruption Authority of Mongolia recently announced the names of 17 individuals, ranging from the former president of Mongolia, Batulug, to current members of parliament, former business CEOs, railway directors, all sorts of individuals, a wide range of people. And I want to ask, how significant is this announcement, seeing the portfolio of these names and what their backgrounds are?
The way they announced was not so serious. If anti-corruption agency needed to announce names, they must have at least tell people exactly, for example, in connection of what kind of crimes or what kind of theft they were involved in. But first of all, that part was quite vague and they didn't expose that. And secondly, many of the people whose name were announced immediately made press conferences and saying that they were never called to be questioned by this agency, and they didn't even know that they were connected or they were being investigated by a crime. So there is a human rights issue about that. So if somebody is not even informed about his own guilt, how he can defend himself, So there is an issue about procedure. If that names were serious list, they should have seriously consider all the procedural matters. The demonstrators are buying. Some people are buying those names, but some people are quite skeptical. How come they are announcing it with so much procedural errors, So we still need to see the seriousness of this investigation, and after all these names are seriously announced, then there will be of belief. So far, even so people wanted to listen to their names, they didn't want to listen to names this way, they wanted to listen to the names with quite exact lawful way. So seems to be not so serious listing, but probably they might have been connected, all those cases. There is a probability that all those names might be correct in relation to the corruption and coal theft, but they didn't give that assurance yet. They just said, we are starting to investigate toward these people. So that's what they said, but didn't assure the public that they were the guilty ones, So
okay, yeah, that puts it into perspective, and it makes me think, because earlier you said that it was Parliament that cut the limbs off the anti-corruption authorities, and now you're also saying that there were many procedural errors in how the anti-corruption agency proceeded with this investigation. Do you think that these procedural errors the anti-corruption agency made is because of what Parliament did to them by weakening them, by deregulating law enforcement? Do you think that is a possibility?
Actually, probably I made myself not so clear in my previous answer. Parliament enabled call theft in a way that it doesn't look like a theft, you know. So that is the fault of Parliament. But they did enable anti-corruption agency with all the necessary tools, all the necessary powers. So anti-corruption agency actually has a power to investigate and bring the result, bring the result of call theft. But what I tried to tell before is that actually the findings that the anti-corruption agency and police can take out from this case is tiny part of the call deals. So they, the laws that are enabling them to enforce the investigations will be very, very narrow and limited, and they will not be able to see the whole broader system, and they can't, they don't have laws that is equipped, that will equip them to go into the all details of this call theft system.
Yeah, so seems like there's many unethical decisions, many misguided steps, one being the anti-corruption agency just jumping the gun, saying that, okay, we're going to look into these people without following the protocol. And then also Parliament making all of these unethical, illegal actions legal, making it the law of the land, and just minimizing the effect the anti-corruption agency can do.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, and then, so I'm on my last question now, and just a kind of summary of everything, but I just want to know from your perspective, so how does this current demonstration compare to the 1991 Democratic Revolution? And, you know, what makes this demonstration stand out from the previous ones? Like we saw a few last year, and then some regarding the COVID-19 restrictions, which I believe resulted in former, now President, Prime Minister to resign due to the mistreatment of some COVID-19 patients. And just overall, what is making this protest so unprecedented and unique?
Mm-hmm. So compared to most recent demonstrations, this demonstration is lasting longer and also being organized, also occurring during the coldest season of the country. So people are not afraid of cold, and they're staying outside, and it's happening in a very, very harsh environment. So still people are continuing to appear on Sukh Square without stopping. So the more people are gathering and the longer period of time it's lasting. So that's why it's quite different from latest demonstrations. While the other previous two demonstrations were the same kind of impromptu citizens gathering without any definite organizer, they were quite short-term, like 1 day or 2 day demonstrations. So this one is longer, like a demonstration of 1990s. But in 1990s, there were clear organizers. The messages were being brainstormed among the organizers, among the organizing NGOs and movements. Here, there's no organized movement or no organized NGO, no party that is leading the demonstration. So there is no leader and there is no organizer compared to 1990s demonstration. But one thing is very similar with 1990s. That is long-lasting anger, and many people are voluntarily coming and joining and keeping the demonstration and sustaining the demonstration for more days and more nights. So probably this is its coldness and its longer sustaining character is quite similar with 1990s, but like no leadership and no organizer part is similar to those that happened recently. So that's why it's like a hybrid version of two historic demonstrations.
Yeah, so it seems like either way, despite the comparisons, it seems like the determination and the strength and the will of these demonstrators and protesters are just very, they're at a very high level right now. And it seems like it's going to stay that way for some time until the government does produce substantial and satisfactory results to put an end to all of the issues.
Yeah, lots of people are wondering, how come that demonstration is not stopping? Even so, government is trying to take many measures, and parliament is trying to respond. And how come the names are being listed and names are being announced? And how come that people are not stopping? Turned out the anger is quite deep, and the coal safety issue is quite broad, and quite broad, and people are demanding to expose all sides of this corruption scheme. So that's why the anger seems to continue on Square.
Okay, so that is all I have prepared for you. Once again, thank you very much for taking time to do this interview. It really means a lot, and I hope that this interview will inform more people, especially for the English speakers or those who are interested in the protest but just can't find much media coverage, or just in general just curious. So once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I do hope that you stay well and stay healthy. And I'll give the floor to you if you have any other final words to say.
Yeah, thank you for your interest in Mongolian demonstration, and good luck in your studies in Virginia Tech. Yeah. You're studying in political science?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell from your questions. Okay. Good luck.
Thank you so much.